Hello and welcome to the show. I'm here on Forza Motorsport 5 with a challenge. We wanted to do some more obstacle course racing a long time ago now. I'm not sure, quite a while back. On Forza 4 we did this and it was really rather good fun. So I want to have a go with it in Forza 5. Now we had planned on using Hummers as the sort of obstacle cars. However, they are DLC and not everybody has them. So in the end, we settled for using Rolls-Royce wraiths. They are DLC, but they're free DLC. So everybody had them except for me because my second account had a problem. I don't know what's going on. I had to use an Audi RS7. But either way, we had these rather large, very heavy cars to act as obstacles to sort of put around the track and make the track kind of change. So here is the way that an obstacle course race works. There are 4 cars that are going to be racing. They're A-class cars. They're sort of just your normal, almost generic, if you like, A-class racing vehicles, while the remaining 12 people are driving these wraiths, and they're going to drive around the circuit and place the cars in various positions to try and make obstacles, make the track sort of change the layout of the track, almost make it very difficult for us guys that are racing. There are only 2 rules that the obstacle course, or the obstacle cars I should say, sorry, have to stick by. The first one being they cannot block the track entirely. There must always be a path for the car to go through. Now you can make a sort of a chicane out of multiple cars if you want. You can make it awkward, you can make it difficult, but there must be a path for the cars to fit through, otherwise this doesn't work. There's no point, just it doesn't work. So yeah, they had to remember to leave a gap big enough for cars to fit through. I don't quite know what these 2 races were up to, sort of like a bad slapstick comedy sketch of moving around, but yeah, there has to be a gap for the cars to get through. And the second rule is you are not allowed to move when the racing cars are approach. So these guys that have parked their cars around are not allowed to suddenly stick it in reverse and where there was a gap, make the gap disappear. Once the racing vehicles appear, they have to stay where they are. Once we've gone past, they can then move and reposition themselves, which means that we're never quite sure when you come to a corner where they're going to be. You see these guys here have made a sort of a chicane where there wasn't a chicane before. And the reason why we're racing at Long Beach is because pretty much all of the corners are blind, so you can't really plan ahead. It's quite scary, to be honest, setting off on this opening race because you have no idea where the wraiths are going to be. In this first race, I was driving, as you could probably tell, the Ferrari 360 Challenge. It was a surprisingly Italian-flavoured race, with a 458 Italia and a Lamborghini Diablo for company. Through the first corner, the poor CRX got caught out a little bit wide, and in trying to avoid the wraith, ended up giving the tap to the back of my car and got me all out of shape. Luckily, everybody made it through without any damage. A little bit of a scare. Come through the next corner and see now there's nothing to worry about. Through this next bit, then there's a wraith right at the apex of the corner. It's quite difficult being the first car because you're the one that's getting to all the corners first and finding where the obstacles are. The cars further back can kind of judge based on what you were doing. It actually kind of ends up evening itself out quite nicely as we come up to that chicane that you saw being built at the start. We all get around it relatively well. I actually get a really good drive out of the exit of that chicane, get alongside the 458 Italia, but I don't have the straight line speed. My car's one of the slower cars in a straight line as we come down this back bit. I think about sort of having a look at the Diablos. I'm not sure Diablo was trying to go around the outside or whether he just outbraked himself. Either way, the Diablo ends up out quite wide. The Honda's trying to get past. Trying to do a normal sort of overtake, a normal proper racing overtake, is incredibly scary around here because you never know what's quite going to happen. As we round the final corner, the 458 Italia ends up in all sorts of trouble, suddenly finding a wraith blocking his path and ends up having to sit and wait. So the Honda that was down the back has now suddenly propelled itself to first with one good corner and shot off down the road. It can change very, very quickly in this sort of racing. Down the front straight, you see my 360 struggling a bit against the other Italian cars. Then we come up towards the first corner. I'm hugging the inside because I'm not entirely sure where a car is going to be. If there'd been a car on the inside, I would have been in a lot of trouble. In that particular one, it's then weaving through some more wraiths at the roundabouts. And again, you see, the field at this stage is still remaining all fairly close. I mean, the Honda is finding a roadblock and is being a bit slower than the cars behind, so we end up kind of catching up, and it all is evening itself out. There's a Rolls-Royce in the middle of the road being a little bit of a pain through the next corner. The Lamborghini was trying to sort of get up the inside of the Honda before realising it wasn't going to fit, as we have a tight chicane. The 458 was a bit slow through that one and loses a little bit of time again up towards us. I don't know why the Diablo is smoking at this point. I'm not entirely sure. I think there's a bit of a laggy replay going on. The 458 found a gap through the roadblock that none of the rest of us spotted, and has now made up all of that time that he had lost. Yeah, I don't know why there's smoke going on. That wasn't something to worry about. I then tried to find a gap through this next roadblock. I tried to find sort of a clever, better line through there, and it didn't work. End up giving the Wraith a little bit of a bump, and if I'd gone the proper way, I would have been better off. So I end up losing some time on this one. Again, you're never quite sure. This time there's nothing to worry about on this final corner, so I was taking a little bit of a different line into that corner, and again, was towards the back. Things got fairly scary for the Honda coming down the start-finish straight. That's a completely blind corner and a very fast one at that. I'm amazed the two of them got through there without a big crash. That was that is a scary moment to sort of suddenly find a car there. Yeah, well done for not having a humongous accident. Again, a Wraith just being a little bit awkward there. That's a tight corner at the best of times, and having the Wraith there caught the Diablo out. I mean, the Diablo is not a small car. The advantage of the little Honda is it's probably half the size of the rest of our vehicles. So yeah, the Diablo got a bit caught out and was therefore quite slow through a corner. The Lamborghini then decides that he's not going to try and go through the chicane and thought there was a big enough gap. It just about got, I'm not sure how much damage the Lamborghini took. He's got track position now, which is pretty important in this one, but in the process has taken a bit of damage to his car. I was down at the back and trying to make up time. I got a little bit carried away. I thought I could take a bit more speed through here, not realising there was a second Wraith, and by the time I realised there was, I wasn't going to stop it in time, and that sort of put pay to the front of my Ferrari. It was still driving, but damaged brakes and suspension and so on was not such a good thing. And when you're down the back of the field, yes, you have the advantage of the cars in front are going first, but you also have the disadvantage of not being able to see very well. And yeah, if there's like three cars in front of you, you sometimes can miss where a Wraith is positioned, and that put my Ferrari out of the race. So it was now a three-way race at the front. The Lamborghini was a little bit broken. The Honda was small and a bit more agile through the corners, while the 458 was very fast in a straight line. Unfortunately, the Hand of Lag would decide that it didn't want to have a proper race, and would, for whatever reason, throw the cars together and send the Ferrari and the Honda spinning. I'm not sure how many rotations that Ferrari did. It was a hell of a lot. I wonder what the Wraith was that was part of the first corner was thinking when just three cars appear sort of backwards and spinning down into the runoff area. There was a nasty chicane for the 458 to navigate, but he made it through okay. It was a big shame actually. It was shaping up to be a really good race. That yeah, on that particular lap, the lag would give up. You can see the damage to the Ferrari. It's still going, but it's bobbing and weaving all over the place on heavily broken suspension and no steering. The race then decided to be very mean and create a car park for us to navigate coming up towards the final corner. The 458 made it through okay. The cars had slightly rearranged themselves by the time that I appeared, and I promptly got stuck trying to fit through a gap. I had to do a bit of a three-point turn reverse, and there we go. There was space for a car to fit through. I just, yeah, didn't quite stop it in time to readjust. I made it through in the 360 though, but it was to be the 458 that would take the victory with squeeze through a gap on the final corner. As I said, it was a shame the lag slightly ruined that as a race, but it had been very good fun, and amazingly my Ferrari would end up in second. The battle for third though would carry on right till the end between the two very broken cars. The Diablo coming off slightly better as far as straight line speed is concerned, as they now come up towards the Rolls-Royce car park, and they didn't have so much of a problem as I did. I think the Rolls-Royce may have slightly repositioned themselves again, just finding some sort of of way through, but as they come up towards the final corner, there was still that awkwardly placed Wraith, and the Diablo ends up in a little bit of trouble trying to squeeze around, and the Honda from nowhere has moved himself up into third as the Wraiths are all messing around trying to get around the final corner. Unfortunately for the poor Honda, it was too badly broken to get any straight line speed, and the Diablo would manage to limp his way to third. Yeah, it had been a very good race. It'd been great fun actually on that one. Just a shame that that at the front that lag had slightly ruined it. As we move on to the second race, one of the Wraiths was being very mean and parking right on the start line, which meant that by the time they came to the first corner, it was amazingly an El Camino that led the race. But leading was not necessarily the best thing as we come into turn one, because you're never quite sure what's there. My Audi was a bit of a nuisance for an NSX, but everything got through there okay. Then there was a pretty nasty chicane that the El Camino got through the best of pretty much everybody. I think the Beetle and the NSX got a little bit caught up in that first one. So the El Camino now led the way. The Audi had made good time through the first chicane, a very sideways El Camino. It's very difficult actually racing here, because you're never quite sure when you want to push, because most people will have driven this track a fair bit. You'll know what you're doing if you like with the track. You'll know roughly what sort of speed you want to be taking and where you want to be braking for corners and so on. But if you go into a corner as you would normally, that's when you have a problem. Again, a nasty chicane here. The NSX tried to go into the corner normally and ends up in the back of the Audi. If the Audi hadn't been there, probably would have ended up in one of the Wraiths. And now the whole group of cars are all pretty much back together again. The El Camino very quick in a straight line, but of course nowhere near as good through the corners. When there's a quiet section, when there's no sort of obstacle cars, that's when you start getting worried. When you haven't seen one for a couple of corners, that's when you know there's going to be a complicated roadblock somewhere. A little bit of lag, I'm not entirely sure what went on at the final hairpin. I don't know why the El Camino suddenly spun into a wall. Yeah, a little bit of a shame on that one. But Beetle found himself in the lead. The El Camino then easily breezed past the NSX with such huge straight line speed. We had devised a very nasty roadblock that the El Camino just ploughed in, and rather than navigating it, they decided it would be best just force the point and make it through. The Chevy got out the other side. Probably the best out of anybody. The Beetle, I don't think took any, or didn't take severe damage, whereas the Audi took an awful lot. Being a front-engine car was not particularly a good thing in this. The mid-engine and rear-engine vehicles tended to survive a little bit better. Yeah, the Audi took a hell of a whack in that initial roadblock, and the NSX was also quite poorly. Around the next corner, both the El Camino and the Beetle end up in the side of a well-positioned Wraith. Again, they were just trying to take sort of the normal racing line, normal racing speed through that corner, and yeah, just don't have time to react to the El Camino's position, and with a little bump on the wall, not the El Camino, the Wraith's position, my bad. And the Beetle ended up in the lead. The NSX was still going, but on the next lap fell for a very similar trap on the on the first corner, and that fired a Wraith a considerable way down the track. I have to say, well done on the catapulting of Rolls-Royce there. That didn't help the NSX very much. As far as damage, I mean, you can see the damage on these cars. It was a little bit less of an exciting race for this second one, primarily because two of the vehicles were killed very early on. The Beetle drove away at the front. We were getting cleverer with creating of the roadblocks for the second time round. The Beetle would take the victory. The El Camino coming in second, which is a surprise. It's a surprise the El Camino comes anywhere other than last when we do races, with the Audi and NSX sort of limping around. I don't think they actually finished. I think they ended up quite severely broken. In our third race, people didn't even bother lining up on a on a start line at all. I don't know what's going on. There was another Wraith being mean at the start, and I think the Mini was the big loser from that. As we come in towards turn one, the Fiesta was being a little bit cautious. The GT86 realised too late that it couldn't stop and just gave the Ford a little bit of a bump. It's one of the risks with this. That it's something that happens. The, the Toyota turned into the first corner, trying his very best when he realised to get stopped. But you can't make the car suddenly stop, and the Fiesta can't, unfortunately, just disappear. So yeah, the Ford got a little bit unlucky on that one, got a bit of a bump into turn 1. So the Toyota and Mini were out in front. The Formula E was somewhere just about in the background, I think. And again, we've gone through a series of corners where things have been suspiciously quiet. The Mini's going for the spectacular around the outside manoeuvre. We then realise another slight problem I hadn't particularly thought of. As we come into the next corner, the Mini and the Toyota kind of plough into the roadblock and then promptly close the gap that was there. One of the Wraiths does do his best to try and move out of the way to let the cars through, ends up kind of catching the Formula E and makes a little bit of a mess of of that particular area. Yeah, there are some times when there are some fairly small gaps, and if a car ploughs into something, that small gap can quickly vanish as a Wraith gets shunted around. Yeah, was less than ideal. The GT86 then proceeded. I'm not sure if he missed his braking point or just had broken brakes, because most of the cars took some damage from that one. The Mini being the worst off, struggling for any power, any straight line speed. The brakes were the bigger issue though, as it just doesn't stop. That's never never a good thing when you jump on the brakes and your car it does that. That's not good. Mini was well and truly out of this. So 3 cars remaining. The GT86 led the way from the Formula E, and the Fiesta. There was a very tight and narrow chicane at the hairpin. The Formula E navigated it fine. The Fiesta maybe not so much. Just no, there's not quite gone well. Again, Fiesta gets going again, and there's no damage done as such. It was such a slow speed bump, but the Fiesta may have lost a little bit of time. Yeah, you've got to be careful through some of the very nasty chicanes. It was a doable chicane. You saw the Formula E get through it, but if you take it a little bit wrong, it's easy to get yourself in trouble. And if the Fiesta had been the lead car at that point, that would have been an awful lot of trouble. This was one of my favourite roadblocks we managed to pull, completely changing the shape of this corner that very much confused the Toyota. The Formula E arriving second had a little bit of a better idea, sort of where to go. I think the Formula E had taken some damage though and was struggling with the straight line speed. The Fiesta was trying to make up time, and when coming to our roadblock, decided he would make a completely different path through. I didn't even think a car could fit through that gap, but the Ford proved otherwise. Yeah, there was often times when a car would approach a roadblock and find there would be multiple gaps through a roadblock, which made things very interesting. Of course, some being quicker than others. Yeah, it was a surprisingly tactical race. At the front, the Formula E had caught up right onto the back of the Toyota and actually went for a proper, sensible, racing-ish overtake. One of the very few that we saw. Unfortunately, the little electric race car was so broken, was really struggling with straight line speed. I'm not sure if he had broken brakes or not, but either way, did not stop in time and completely clonked the side of the Wraith. Still, the electric car went on, and as these lot were sort of trying to navigate the roadblocks, I caused a little bit of a scare for the Formula E there. The Fiesta was catching up to the group, despite having got stuck a couple of times. It was now a 3-way battle for the lead as they came up towards the final corner. Another well-placed roadblock caught the Toyota out and promptly put him in the wall. The Fiesta got in trouble as well. You can make some really nasty blocks, nasty obstacles on that final corner if you could place the wraiths cleverly, that some cars would really struggle on. The Toyota would gradually drop back through this, and it would become a 2-horse race between the Formula E, that was of course very quick through the corners, but had suffered some form of damage, being incredibly slow in a straight line as they come up on the final lap. Little bit more lag going on as they navigate through another tight roadblock. The Fiesta's on its side almost. Those little bumps on the inside of the curbs are absolutely horrible. And around the final corner, there was no nastiness this time for the cars, and it's just a run towards the line for the Fiesta that had the probably the best, the healthiest of cars, and then there was a big pile of wraiths after the finish line for whatever reason. So despite having been at the back for most of the race, it was the Ford that would take victory with the Formula E in second place. And the final race of the day, we would have some very mean race. It was 2 wraiths wide on the start line there, so there's only a tiny gap for the cars to get through. This Caterham though absolutely rocketed off in that. I'm presuming it's 4-wheel drive. I don't know. It absolutely shot off down the sort of the first straight coming up towards turn 1. There was an F2000 car as well that we all expected could do quite well, because of course they got loads and loads of grip. I'm not sure if that's a little bit of a laggy replay going on there. The way the cars moved into position for that looks slightly odd. Yeah, I'm going to presume that there's a laggy replay. Yeah, the F2000 got through the chicane okay. I think it was a Lamborghini and a Rough that were got a little bit caught out on the chicane. So these top two had made a huge margin after only the opening half of a lap, and there was already a pretty big gap opening up between the Caterham and the F2000 car. But of course, having not seen a car, or not seen too many cars for a little while, you know there's going to be trouble at some point, and the Caterham just carries a little too much speed and completely blocks the road with the back of the Wraith. And now the Wraiths are not entirely sure what to do, because the F2000 car is trying to fit through the middle and now can't. These cars are barely strong enough to push the very heavy Wraiths out of the way. The Rough gets a little bit cheeky and spies an opportunity to make up a place. Unfortunately, despite getting through, the Caterham is now rather broken as they come down the back, and that huge margin that they had opened up had been completely closed again by getting so. Yeah, and I think the Caterham may have had broken brakes. It just wouldn't stop into this next corner. Yeah, that's the problem. When you nudge or when you hit one of the Wraiths with a little bit of force, you can close the gaps up, and yeah, they made a complete roadblock. The F2000 made his way through. The Rough found that you can go through a Rolls Royce apparently with a little bit of lag, and the open wheeled car was leading the way. Got a little bit confused by the two Wraiths. Ended up going very, very slow. The Rough saw the gap a lot sooner and could go flat out, and the F2000 had dropped it back to second. There was a nastily placed Wraith there on the inside of that fast corner as well, and from just that one slight mistake, just not quite seeing the gap, the F2000 has gone from the lead and fallen down to third as the Lamborghini finds his way past as well. Again, as I was saying, it kind of balances itself out. You some laps you'll pull away quite quickly. The Rough then found a very narrow chicane. It turns out you can't fit two cars. This chicane was barely wide enough for one car, so the F2000 and Lamborghini were going to have to wait to take it in turns. We did get gradually meaner and meaner with the gaps. I think occasionally we may have had a little bit too smaller gaps in some of them. We did our best though on there. There wasn't any really terrible ones. We then managed to completely confuse the Rough as to where on earth to go. We'd filled the road with cars. There was a gap in front of my Audi, and rather bothering to try and navigate the rolls, the Porsche decides that the best idea is we'll just push it out of the way, and then the two cars will follow through behind. And again, there was a big gap between the vehicles, and now with that particular obstacle, they've all closed back up again, and it was back to being a three-way sort of battle for the lead. I think at some point, though, the F2000, I think it may have got quite broken and was struggling a little bit for just sort of general. I think actually may have broken his brakes at some point. As the Lamborghini dodges through some Wraiths, see in the background the F2000 just shoot off. I can't quite figure out where the F2000 took some heavy damage to his brakes, but either way, you see him fire off in the background. So it was now down to just two vehicles, the Rough versus the Lamborghini. Yeah, aside from the first race, where we had a pretty close one throughout, we were getting meaner, definitely, with the obstacles. One of the better ones I saw on the final turn there, the Rough just completely running out of steering and not being able to make that corner, promoting the Lamborghini up into first. And as we came on the very final lap, the cars squeezing their way through. That wasn't quite the gap that we intended, but the Lamborghini found a way past. It was down to these two cars that remained close up towards the final corner. This time round, though, there was no meanness? Sure, that's a thing. On the final turn, the Lamborghini gets a bit of a slide on, but the Rough is too far back, and the four-wheel drive sort of launch of the Lambo was enough for it to take victory. The Rough in second place, the F2000 and Caterham quite a long way down with some fairly broken cars. Yeah, obstacle course racing was very good fun, I have to say. Thoroughly enjoyed messing around with this. The first race was probably the best actual race for the car, for the four A-class cars. We had a very good race for for most of it, as the obstacles gradually got meaner and meaner towards the end. But yeah, it was very enjoyable to get a big group of people together. I would definitely recommend you give it a go. It is a lot of fun. Yeah, it is quite difficult. And one thing, of course, all of the cars that were racing had no map on and didn't have the names over the cars, so you really had absolutely no idea where anybody was. Yeah, it produced some interesting racing. It's certainly a different way of racing. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, a goodbye.